Before we begin, pause for just a second. If you want stories like this to keep finding you, then like and hit the subscribe button. And leave a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is right now. Now, turn the lights down, stay very still, and let the shadows take over. I never thought a single swipe could rewrite my understanding of fear. At the time, my life felt painfully ordinary. I was 28, living alone in a small apartment just outside the city, working a job that paid the bills but left me exhausted and numb by the end of every day. Most of my friends were married or engaged, their lives moving forward in neat, predictable lines while mine felt stuck in a loop. So when I downloaded the dating app, it didn't feel dangerous. It felt normal. Everyone was doing it. I told myself I was just putting myself out there, the way people always said you should. That's when I matched with Evan. His profile was simple. No shirtless photos. No cringe bio. Just a quiet smile, brown eyes, and a line that said, "Not here to waste time. Looking for something real." That sentence stuck with me more than it should have. We started talking that night. At first, it was small things. Music, favorite late-night food, bad movies we secretly loved. But the conversation flowed too easily. There were no awkward pauses, no forced jokes. He asked thoughtful questions. He remembered details. When I mentioned my mom's health issues in passing, he checked in about it days later. It felt intentional. After a week, we moved from the app to texting. After 2 weeks, we were talking on the phone almost every night. His voice was calm and steady, the kind that made you feel like everything was under control even when it wasn't. He never pushed, never rushed, never crossed boundaries. That's what made me trust him. Looking back, I realize how carefully that trust was built. Evan learned my routine faster than I noticed. He knew what time I got home from work. He knew I hated driving at night. He knew I lived alone. When I joked once about how my building's security gate was always broken, he laughed it off, but asked exactly where the cameras were. I told myself I was overthinking. When he suggested meeting in person, he did it gently. "No pressure," he said. "We can take it slow. I just don't want to stay a voice forever." We agreed on coffee. A public place. Midday. See? The cafe was crowded when I arrived, sunlight pouring through the windows. I remember scanning the room nervously until I saw him stand up from a corner table and smile. He looked exactly like his photos. That detail mattered more than I realized at the time. The date was perfect. Too perfect. He listened more than he spoke. He didn't check his phone once. When I laughed, he laughed with me, not louder, not quieter, just enough to match my energy. When we hugged goodbye, it was brief and respectful. "I had a really good time," he said. "I'd like to see you again." I drove home smiling, replaying the conversation in my head, feeling lighter than I had in months. That night, he texted me, "I'm glad you made it home safe." I remember pausing when I read that. I hadn't told him I was driving. I brushed it off. Maybe he assumed. Over the next few weeks, we saw each other often. Always public. Always planned. He never came to my place. I never went to his. When I asked where he lived, he said he was between places, crashing with a friend while he looked for something permanent. It sounded reasonable. The first moment something felt wrong came quietly. One night, after a long day, I decided to stop at a grocery store I didn't usually go to. As I walked through the aisles, my phone buzzed. "Evan, did you end up working late today?" I frowned. "Yeah, why?" I replied. There was a pause. No reason. Just checking in. When I stepped outside, loading bags into my car, I had the strange sensation that someone was watching me. I turned slowly, scanning the parking lot. Nothing. I told myself stress was getting to me. The next day, Evan casually mentioned the grocery store. The exact one. He joked about how confusing the layout was. I laughed, but something inside me tightened. "Have you been there?" I asked. "Once or twice," he said easily. "It's popular." That answer didn't fully settle me, but I let it go. I wanted to believe him. That's the thing about fear when it's subtle. It's easy to ignore. A few days later, he suggested dinner at his place. He said his friend was out of town and he finally had privacy. He promised to cook. Promised it would be relaxed. I hesitated. He noticed immediately. "Hey," he said softly over the phone. "If you're not comfortable, we don't have to. I don't want you doing anything that feels wrong." That was the moment I agreed. I arrived just after sunset. His apartment building was older, quiet, tucked away from the main road. He met me at the door with the same calm smile, the same steady presence I had grown used to. Inside, everything was neat. Too neat. No personal photos. No clutter. No signs of anyone else living there. Dinner was already prepared. We ate. We talked. I relaxed. Then, at some point, I realized my phone had no signal. I joked about it. He laughed and said the building had bad reception. He offered me a drink. I declined. He didn't push. When I stood up to use the bathroom, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. On the counter near his keys was a small notebook. My name was written on the front. Not a nickname. Not a pet name. My full name. I stared at it, my heart beginning to race, trying to convince myself there was a reasonable explanation. Then I saw the dates underneath. Dates that matched our conversations. Dates that matched my schedule. That was the moment I understood something was very wrong. And I was alone inside his apartment. I didn't touch the notebook at first. I just stood there, pretending to study the kitchen counter while my heartbeat climbed into my throat. My name sat on the cover in neat, deliberate handwriting. Not rushed. Not casual. The kind of writing someone uses when they want to be understood later. I told myself it could be something harmless. A coincidence. A joke that hadn't landed yet. Then I noticed the pen beside it. Uncapped. Recently used. From the living room, Evan asked, "Everything okay?" His voice was calm. Too calm. "Yeah," I called back, forcing my tone to stay even. "Just washing my hands." I didn't wash them. Instead, I opened the notebook. The first page held a date. The day we matched. Below it was a list. Favorite music, indie low volume. Coffee order, oat milk no sugar. Gets quiet when anxious. Lives alone. Avoids confrontation. My vision blurred as I turned the page. There were entries for our first phone call. Our first date. Small observations that no one should have been recording. Things I hadn't said out loud. Things I hadn't even realized about myself. On one page, a line was underlined twice. Responds best to reassurance, not logic. My mouth went dry. This wasn't memory. This was study. I flipped further, my hands shaking now, unable to stop myself. The later pages became darker. Less descriptive. More predictive. If uncomfortable, we'll laugh first. If afraid, we'll try to stay polite. Likely exit attempt. Bathroom or forgot something in car. A sound came from behind me. "Hey," Evan said gently. "I was wondering how long it would take you to find that." I turned slowly. He was leaning against the doorway, blocking the only exit from the kitchen. His expression wasn't angry. It wasn't excited either. It was relieved. "I can explain," he said, raising his hands slightly, like someone calming a nervous animal. "You weren't supposed to see it yet." My body screamed at me to move, but my legs wouldn't cooperate. "Why is my name in there?" I asked. My voice didn't sound like mine anymore. He sighed like I'd asked something obvious. "Because I care. Because I wanted to understand you properly." "This isn't understanding," I said. This is obsessive." He smiled just a little. "People call things obsessive when they don't want to admit how comforting predictability is." I took a step back. He stepped forward. The distance between us stayed the same. "You tracked me," I said. "You wrote down my schedule." "I noticed patterns," he corrected. "You're very consistent. That's not a flaw. It's a gift." I glanced toward the front door. He noticed immediately. "You won't get reception out there either," he said softly. "The walls are thick. Old building." My chest tightened. "Why invite me here?" I asked. He looked almost hurt by the question. "Because this was the next step. I wanted you to see how well I know you. I thought it would make you feel safe." I laughed once, sharp and shaky. "Safe." "Yes," he said. "Taken care of." I moved again, this time faster, aiming for the door. He didn't grab me. He didn't raise his voice. He just said my name. The way he said it stopped me cold. "You're not ready to leave yet," he said calmly. "Your breathing's already shallow. If you run now, you'll panic before you reach your car. You always do when your heart rate spikes like this." I hated that he was right. "You see," he continued, "this is why I write things down. So I can help." I turned back toward him, fury cutting through the fear. "Let me leave." "Soon," he said. "But not like this." I noticed then that his phone was on the table behind him, face down, plugged in. "You invited me," I said slowly. "You cooked. You planned all this." "Yes." "You planned what happens next too, didn't you?" He didn't answer immediately. That silence was worse than a confession. "I planned for different outcomes," he said finally. "You finding the notebook early just changes the order." Something clicked into place in my mind then, cold and sharp. I stopped arguing. I forced my shoulders to relax. I softened my voice. "I'm sorry," I said. "I shouldn't have looked." I freaked out. His posture changed instantly. Less rigid. More open. "I knew you'd calm down," he said with quiet satisfaction. "I just need air," I added. "Can I step outside for a minute?" He studied my face. I could almost see him flipping through his mental notes, checking my behavior against his expectations. "You'll come back," he said. "Yes," I lied. "I just need a minute." He nodded. "Bathroom first. Cold water helps you reset." I walked past him toward the bathroom, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. Once inside, I locked the door and leaned against it, breathing through my nose the way I always did during panic attacks. Only this time, I didn't let it take over. I scanned the room. No window. No second exit. My phone still had no signal. Then I noticed the vent above the toilet. It wasn't secured properly. I climbed onto the counter, fingers scraping as I tugged at the metal cover. It came loose with a soft clatter I prayed he wouldn't hear. Inside was darkness. And space. Enough space. I heard his footsteps outside the door. "Take your time," he said. "I'm right here." I forced myself to move quietly, pulling myself up, squeezing into the narrow opening. The metal scraped my arms. I bit my lip to keep from crying out. Behind me, the bathroom door rattled. "It's okay," he said gently. "You don't need to hide." I kicked backward, shoving the vent cover into place just as the door handle turned. The vent tunnel was hot, dusty, and tight. I crawled blindly, every inch burning, terrified of making noise. After what felt like forever, I felt cool air brush my face. Another vent. Another room. I pushed. The cover popped free and I fell hard onto carpet. I was in a hallway. Not his hallway. I ran. I didn't stop running until I was outside, gasping, my lungs on fire, my hands shaking so badly I dropped my phone twice before it finally caught signal. I called the police. By the time they arrived, Evan's apartment was empty. No notebook. No notes. No evidence he had ever lived there. Just a clean, quiet space that felt like it had been waiting for someone else. The officer told me I was lucky. I didn't feel lucky. I felt watched. For 3 days after I escaped Evan's apartment, I didn't leave my sister's house. I told her everything except the notebook. I didn't know how to explain that part without sounding unhinged. Instead, I said he'd made me uncomfortable. That he'd scared me. That I'd felt trapped. All true. Just not all of it. The police checked in once. They said they couldn't find anyone under Evan's last name. The dating profile was gone. The number disconnected. No lease under his name. No utility records. He probably used an alias, the officer said, trying to sound reassuring. Guys like that disappear fast. Guys like that. I wanted to believe it was over. That I'd slipped out of something rare and awful and lived to tell the story. Then the messages started again. Not from him. From places. The first came while I was lying awake at 2:14 a.m., staring at my sister's ceiling fan. My phone buzzed softly on the nightstand. A known number. "You always forget to lock the side gate." My stomach flipped. My sister didn't have a side gate. At least, not one I'd mentioned to anyone. I didn't reply. I turned my phone face down and waited for my heartbeat to slow. It didn't. The next message came the following afternoon while I sat in my car outside a grocery store, trying to feel normal again. Unknown number. Blue sweater today. You look tired. I dropped my phone. I scanned the parking lot, my chest tightening, eyes darting from car to car, person to person. No one stood out. No one stared too long. I drove home shaking. That night, I finally told the police about the messages. They took screenshots. Asked if I recognized the number. I didn't. Could be coincidence, one of them said, not unkindly. I didn't argue. I knew better. The third message was the one that broke something in me. It arrived just after midnight. Unknown number. You don't like staying in one place too long when you're scared. That's smart. I sat on the edge of the bed, phone glowing in my hands, and realized something chilling. He wasn't guessing. He was watching. The next morning, I packed a bag and left my sister's house without telling her where I was going. I drove 2 hours west to a small motel near a highway exit I'd never used before. I paid cash. Asked for a room at the back. For the first time in days, I slept. When I woke up, my phone had no new messages. Relief washed over me so hard it almost hurt. Then I noticed the note. It was slid under the door. No envelope. Just a single piece of folded paper. My hands shook as I picked it up. Inside, written in the same careful handwriting from the notebook, were 4 words. You forgot your charger. I screamed. The motel manager called the police. Again. They searched the area. Again. Found nothing. Again. But this time the officer didn't look skeptical. This feels targeted, he admitted quietly. We're going to escalate this. They took the note. They checked the cameras. The footage showed someone standing outside my door at 3:02 a.m. Tall. Put up. Face angled away from the camera. He stood there for exactly 12 seconds. Then he slid the note under the door and walked away. No knock. No hesitation. Like he knew I'd see it eventually. I moved again that night. Different motel. Different town. I stopped using my phone except when absolutely necessary. I paid in cash. I changed clothes. I even cut my hair shorter, hoping it might help. It didn't. The messages continued. Not constant. Not frantic. Measured. Observational. You take the stairs now instead of elevators. You drink less coffee when you're anxious. You still look over your shoulder even when you pretend you're not. Each message felt like a hand brushing the back of my neck. One afternoon, after a week of running, I cracked. I replied, "Me. What do you want?" The response came instantly. Unknown number. You already know. Me. I don't. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Then. I want you to stop running. You're exhausting yourself. Anger flared through the fear. Me. Leave me alone. Pause. Longer this time. Then. I can't do that. You didn't finish the process. My throat tightened. Me. What process? Several minutes passed. Long enough for hope to flicker. Then the phone buzzed again. Learning each other. I turned my phone off. That night I made a decision. I couldn't keep running. He knew my patterns, my habits, my tells, but he didn't know everything. I called the detective assigned to my case and told him I wanted to help. We made a plan. I would stay in one place, public, predictable. I would let him think he was winning. 2 days later, I checked into a busy hotel downtown under my real name. I posted a photo online for the first time in weeks. Smiling. Come. The message came an hour later. There you are. My skin crawled. The detective assured me they had people watching. Cameras ready. Phones tapped. He'll make a mistake, he said. They always do. That evening, as I sat in the hotel lobby pretending to scroll, my phone buzzed again. Room 417 doesn't feel safe for you. My breath caught. I was in room 417. I looked up, and for the first time since escaping, I saw him. Across the lobby. Near the elevators. No hood. No attempt to hide. Evan smiled at me. Not wide. Not threatening. Just pleased. I stood up, heart hammering, eyes flicking toward the security desk, toward the cameras. He didn't move. My phone buzzed one last time. You should have stayed curious instead of afraid. The lights flickered. And in that instant, I understood something terrifying. This wasn't about control. It was about patience, and he had far more of it than I did. The lights came back on almost immediately. People around me barely reacted. A few annoyed groans. Someone laughed it off. To everyone else, it was just a flicker. A harmless glitch. To me, it felt like a warning. Evan was already gone. The elevators dinged. Doors opened and closed. Guests moved around me, unaware that the man I'd been running from for weeks had just stood 10 feet away and smiled like this was all going according to plan. Security swarmed the lobby minutes later. The detective grabbed my arm and pulled me aside, asking rapid-fire questions. "Are you sure it was him? Did he say anything? Did he touch you?" I could barely answer. My eyes kept drifting back to the elevators. They searched the building. Every floor. Every stairwell. Every exit. Evan vanished again. But this time he left something behind. The hotel's IT manager called the police an hour later. Someone had accessed the guest Wi-Fi system. Not hacked it, logged in with valid credentials. My credentials. The detective looked at me slowly. "Did you ever give him access to your email?" I shook my head, then stopped. "No, but I logged into my email at his place. That first night, I used his laptop. The room went quiet. They traced the access point to a device that was no longer on the network. Whoever it was had connected, rerouted traffic, and disappeared in under 3 minutes. He's not just watching you," the detective said finally. "He's rehearsing." That word stuck with me. Rehearsing. The next morning, they moved me to a safe house. No windows facing the street. Unmarked location. 2 officers stationed outside at all times. For the first time since this began, I felt something close to safety. It lasted 6 hours. At 3:47 p.m., my phone buzzed. A known number. "I told you room 417 wasn't safe." My blood went cold. The detective took the phone immediately. "He can't know where you are." But I already knew the truth. He didn't need to. That night, while the officers talked quietly in the other room, I stared at the ceiling and thought about Evan's apartment. The notebooks, the list, the way everything felt practiced. He hadn't been improvising with me. I was a test run. At 1:12 a.m. the power went out. Not just lights, everything. Phones, backup generator. Silence so complete it rang in my ears. Someone cursed down the hall. Then came the sound I'd been dreading. Footsteps. Slow. Come. Inside the house. The officers shouted. Commands. Movement. A scuffle. Then a scream. I bolted out of the bedroom, heart slamming against my ribs, just in time to see one of the officers collapse against the wall, blood spreading across his shoulder. The other officer fired his weapon. The shots were deafening. And then, nothing. No return fire. No body. Just an open back door swinging gently in the cold night air. Evan was gone again. But this time he'd crossed a line. The safe house was compromised. I was rushed to a hospital under guard. News crews gathered outside, lights flashing, reporters whispering about an ongoing investigation. They sedated me to sleep. When I woke up, my phone was waiting on the table. The detective stood nearby, face tight. "He left you something," he said. It was a USB drive. No fingerprints. No markings. Just a single folder labeled with my name. Inside were videos. Dozens of them. Footage of me weeks before we ever matched. Walking to work. Sitting in cafes. Leaving my gym. Unlocking my front door. Angles I didn't recognize. Cameras I never noticed. And then plans. Blueprints. Diagrams. Safe houses. Hotels. Escape routes. Mine. He predicted every move. The final file was a video recorded that morning. Evan sat at a table, calm as ever, looking directly into the camera. "You weren't supposed to involve them," he said softly. "That was disappointing." I felt like I couldn't breathe. "This was never about hurting you," he continued. "It was about seeing how far trust could stretch before it snapped." He leaned forward. "And you stretched beautifully." The video ended. They moved me out of state that night. New name. New records. No online presence. No contact with anyone except immediate family. Evan was never officially identified. No fingerprints. No DNA. No confirmed identity. Just a pattern of disappearances, incidents, and unfinished plans scattered across 3 states. Years have passed. I live quietly now. Offline. Watching. Listening. But sometimes, usually late at night, I notice things. A car parked too long outside my building. A stranger who seems to recognize my walk. A message request that disappears before I can open it. And every time I remember something Evan said during our first date. Something that didn't feel important back then. "You know," he'd said, smiling, "the scariest relationships aren't the ones that explode. They're the ones that never really end." I didn't expect the truth to arrive quietly. No threats. No flickering lights. No footsteps outside my door. Just an email. It came 3 years after everything went dark. 3 years of silence. 3 years of believing, almost convincingly, that Evan had finally let go. The sender line read, "Drafts." No address. No name. Just the subject line. "You're almost finished." My hands went numb. I stared at the screen for a long time before opening it. Long enough to remember every warning I'd been given. Long enough to consider deleting it. Curiosity 1. The email contained a single attachment. Another video. I didn't watch it right away. I shut the laptop. Stood up. Walked to the kitchen. Drank a full glass of water even though my throat felt like sand. Then I sat back down and pressed play. The video opened on an empty room. White walls. Bare floor. A single chair. Then Evan stepped into frame. He looked older. Not much, but enough. A few new lines around his eyes. Same calm. Same posture. Same unsettling patience. "I wondered how long it would take you to find this," he said gently. I felt cold all over. "You did well," he continued. "You disappeared when I needed you to. You stayed quiet. You learned." He smiled. "That was the hardest part for most people." Most people. My fingers clenched against the desk. "You see," Evan said, leaning closer to the camera, "this was never about you escaping me." The room felt suddenly too small. It was about seeing who could change. He tilted his head. "And you changed beautifully." The video cut to footage I didn't recognize at first. A man sitting in a coffee shop. Nervous. Scrolling on his phone. A woman laughing across from him. Another dating app conversation. Another beginning. "I stopped needing to watch you after the first year," Evan's voice continued over the footage. "Because by then you understood the rules." The screen went black. White text appeared. Rule 1. People reveal themselves when they feel chosen. Rule 2. Fear creates honesty. Rule 3. The ones who escape become mirrors. I felt sick. The final clip showed a familiar scene. A crowded restaurant. 2 people on a first date. The woman leaned in, smiling. The man looked uncertain. Then, just for a second, he glanced directly at the camera. At me. "You're not my ending," Evan's voice said softly. "You're my proof." The video ended. I sat there for hours afterward. Laptop still open. Screen dark. Heart beating slow and heavy, like it didn't trust the silence. I called the detective. Left a message. Sent the file to every contact I still had. They responded days later. The file's metadata was clean. No traceable origin. No IP address. No timestamp that made sense. The footage itself? Unverifiable. No faces clear enough. No locations identifiable. No crime. Just implication. Weeks passed. Then months. Nothing happened. Until one night, while grocery shopping, I overheard a conversation in the next aisle. 2 women, early 20s, laughing. I met him on an app, one said. He's intense but in a good way, like really observant. My chest tightened. He says things that feel weirdly personal, the woman continued. Like he already knows me. I abandoned my cart and left the store. That night I couldn't sleep. I realized something I hadn't allowed myself to think before. Evan didn't want me afraid anymore. He wanted me aware. I'd spent years watching shadows, checking exits, reading people too carefully. And somewhere along the way I'd started doing exactly what he did. Not stalking. Not controlling. Observing. Predicting. Protecting myself by assuming the worst. I'd become cautious. Quiet. Unreadable. Prepared. I opened my laptop. Went to the dating app I'd sworn never to touch again. Created a profile. No photo. No details. Just a name. Curious. Within minutes, a message appeared. First time here? I stared at it. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. I closed the app. Deleted the account. Some lines shouldn't be crossed, even to prove a point. I don't know where Evan is. I don't know how many stories like mine are out there, unfolding quietly, unnoticed. But I do know this. Some nightmares don't chase you. They teach you. And sometimes the scariest part isn't surviving them. It's realizing how much of them stays with you afterward. Because even now, years later, when someone looks at me a little too closely, I wonder, not if they're dangerous, but if they're learning, and whether I was ever meant to escape, or just meant to understand. The end.